Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Josh. I'm co-lead of the Zero Trust Working Group within Cloud Security Alliance, as well as participate in the AI Working Group. And I'm excited to introduce you to three esteemed professionals from various walks of life. We've got biotech, fintech, and academia represented. I'll let each of these professionals introduce themselves. But we're eager to share insights, lessons learned, and hopefully contribute and add value to your own AI journey by joining our panel discussion here. Harry, please go ahead if you want to start us off.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. Okay, so I'm Harry Yu. I'm a product leader at Genentech Roche, and I've been at the company for about 13 years. I've been doing many different roles, like moving from the sciences in protein chemistry and molecular and biology. And in the last few years, I've moved into the informatics and AI space, and I'm absolutely loving this. There's so much opportunity to make impact in a big and large organization to achieve really exciting things. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
It was great to have you, Harry. Rasika, would love to hear from you next.
Sure. Hi, my name is Rasika. I'm a teaching faculty at Northeastern University in Oakland. And yeah, so I like to teach both the introductory courses, but then also just like the graduate level AI courses. And I think that there are some really good opportunities for AI in education, and then there's also opportunities for it to harm education. But I am interested in both of those, and also teaching AI ethically and sort of planning for our future.
Our audience members should be so lucky. They get a master's degree education as a part of attending our panel. Thank you for joining, Rasika. Govin, please, would love to hear from you next.
Sure. I'm Palanisamy. I'm one of the enterprise architect in global payments. My focus area is around data, AI, adoption of AI, and innovating with various like technologies that what's actually like coming into the field. I've been with global payments for 10 years. We do like cool things, and we do take like security very close to our hearts because like we wanted to like protect the our customers, cardholders, and consumers, because at the end of the day, one small thing can actually like impact lives of millions of people. That's like we were very cautious about like taking steps in protecting it as well.
All right, thank you, Govin. Appreciate that. It's a pleasure to moderate this group here. I will remind the audience, these are all practitioners in industry, and so as much as we want to share lessons learned and insight, we will be careful not to disclose confidential information or any intellectual property. But we hope you get something out of this. There's lots of lessons learned as a community. It's one thing I really like about Cloud Security Alliance is it's just a group of practitioners all volunteering to help elevate the state of the practice, whether it's AI or zero trust or any of the other pillars that we support. Great. I'd like to start us off with a question. Really curious to hear from each of you. Um, I think a common question that a lot of folks across industry, both public and private, that I'm working with, always wondering about how to move forward, how to make progress. And there's a lot of different barriers. So I'd like to really hear from each of you on what you see as the most significant barrier to AI adoption in your field and what you're doing about it in as general and abstract terms as you can. Risika, would you mind? I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing both in academics as well as potentially even your students. What are you seeing as the most significant barrier from your perspective?
Oh man, the most significant is well, predicting the future is really hard. So there's that because well, a lot of my students, like we're predicting them for jobs that they'll get when they graduate, like several years from now, and also and at the same time we're already like trying to sort of play catch up to what is available right now, because I think that the way that people work is different with AI, right? Like you have AI helping you write everything, which is a good thing, and but also could be misused. And so, like teaching students how to use AI safely and ethically, and and all that, carefully watching it for hallucinations and all that, while also still using it effectively, like helping them, be competitive at their jobs, is I think the biggest challenge. I think a lot of people would say that one of the biggest challenges is plagiarism and cheating. But I'm not convinced that that's the biggest challenge because I think that, well, that's been around a while. There's just one more easily accessible source, right? It's like talking to another person. Like they've been able to talk to a person who will do it for them, their homework, for them. So now instead they could talk to an AI to do it for them. But it is, it's something that we do have to teach them is like what counts as cheating, right? Like what are you allowed to ask of AI and what are you not? But once we sort of get over that hurdle, I think the biggest thing is like training them to use it.
That's great insight. It's so fascinating teaching folks to use it and use it for a lot of things, but also verifying that what you're going to use it for is the right thing and that it's saying the right thing and monitoring those hallucinations. Lots of questions. Just one follow-up because I'm having daughters in school and hearing a lot of concern from educators out there. What's your opinion on encouraging the use of AI within teaching AI? Is this a mandatory thing that you ask of your students? What's your take on that?
I think that it's a necessary skill in order for the students to be competitive in the job market. I think, like, or being like, being able to sort of keep up in the field. Um, in terms of like, I'm not sure where are your daughter? How old are your daughters?
They're in high school.
Okay. So for I do think that there's a different thing to be said about like sort of the introductory or high school level courses, because new technology has been introduced before. Like you can see calculators, right? Like there are calculators that can solve everything that you can learn in middle school at least, and so teachers decide when calculators are allowed and when they're not, and sort of like the invention of calculators made teachers have to like consider like, okay, what do we really want to teach the students, like what do we want them to be good at, and then sort of reevaluate the curriculum that way. But yeah, for the introductory courses, there could be an argument made that like, okay, to learn the basics you got to do it without AI, and then after that, like you got to learn to write essays without AI first, and then after that you can use AI to sort of help you. So like one of the tips that I tell my students is that only use AI to write things that you already knew you could write, just like faster and like looking up syntax and things like that.
That's a really insightful answer. I think embrace, adjust, and adapt might be one takeaway from this approach, right? You can't run from it. It's here. People are going to use it. So adjust to it and figure out how to make it work for you. Great. Thank you, Rasika. Govind, would love to hear from you. Most significant barriers to AI adoption that you see within your industry, maybe even your customers or anywhere in your world.
Yeah, so we work in the financial services industry. It's very highly regulated, and it's also like dealing with a lot of like sensitive personal information as well as cardholder information, right? So based on that, the availability of like synthetic data for testing or creating AI models, it's not there completely, because when we need to like get a real outcome, like from a benefit perspective, we need to have like massive scale like data to train those like models, like to do things like fraud detection, or even identify when somebody is trying to like onboard to your platforms, like getting the deepfake documentation. Like there are that those were like the barriers, and there are like systems now coming up as part of this AI era, where we could actually like generate like petabyte scale of data using tools and technologies that's coming into the market. That's one area. And the other is where in the financial services, it depends on the company scale where they operate from, right? If they are just like specifically focused around certain geographic markets, then they have like less regulations to deal with. But whereas company like at our scale, like we operate worldwide at 60 plus countries, which means like we have to abide by all the regulations that's coming up, and it it's a little bit overwhelming for our attorneys and our regulatory bodies to look at, okay, what sort of like things that we need to like look at.
The data challenge, whether
Hmm.
it's the availability of the data, the accuracy. I would even take it further to what Rasika said, and even the bias of the data, right? I mean, there's a lot of
Hmm.
ethics that come through, especially when you get
Sure.
large pools of organic data. But you touch on a really good point, and I anticipate Harry's dealing with this quite a bit as well. As a global enterprise, there is such a large body of regulatory compliance and privacy acts enabling all over different regions. And if you're in all of those regions, I think we're keeping our lawyer friends quite busy. They've got lots of work to do as they keep up with the rapid expansion of organizational adoption of AI. So it's great to see those trends. Hopefully that helps others watching this to understand you're not alone, because I think it's such a common challenge to really overcome. Great. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I'd like to ask really, so we know the barriers, we've talked about those. I would love to talk about the success. And what I'm interested in, and I think our audience might be interested in, is how do you measure success? What are the, for the AI initiatives within your own domain, how are you measuring success? How do you know you're moving forward? What are the markers or signals or attributes that you might look at?
I honestly have a little bit of an unusual answer, but I think one of the best measures of success is actually excitement. Honestly, in a large enterprise, the ultimate goal is to harness the workforce and get them all involved in AI. And really, this is about creating a tipping point and getting past just the innovators and the early adopters to capture the majority. And if we're being realistic, like most of the things we build today, because of the pace of the fast moving environment and how everything's just rapidly evolving, the products we build today could be obsolete in 1 or 2 years. So it really doesn't matter if we measure typical things like accuracy today. What we're really interested in and how we define success is if people are now getting upskilled, if they're interested in AI, so that we could keep working with them as this field keeps evolving, because this is really just the beginning. So I think excitement and engaging the people is really one of the ways that we're thinking of success.
That's really great. I wonder how surprising that is for folks, but I love that. I think what a great measure. Your own personnel adopting and embracing it is what's going to help you make the most use of it. So what a great metric. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Harry. Rasika, I'm interested to know how are you measuring success besides, they're getting an A. I'm not sure if there's other attributes that you look at within your world.
Oh yeah, I don't really look at A's. I think that grades are not the not the end all be all measure of success. Far from it. But actually, Harry, that's a really good like excitement and adoption. That's a pretty good measure. So like basically, you know, I think that one of the sort of fastest ways to achieve like ethical technology is by having populations who are building the tools, the technological tools, be sort of like reflect the populations that are being affected by those tools, and so so that's why I think like diversity in the technologists who are working on our code, on our tools, are that's key. So if we sort of get more people excited and interested in working on AI, a really common sort of example that I like to use is that like word vectors were invented in like 2001, right? But then all these studies about the social bias in word vectors that's like embedded in them, encoded in them, and then used in these real tools came out in like the late like 2017, 2018. Like that's when people started looking at social bias in these word vectors. And until then, we were using these word vectors to represent language in in our computers, so like resume screeners and search engines, like all this sort of stuff. And so I think that like having a sufficiently diverse set of people who are like interested in, as you said, like Harry, excited by these tools, like that's what I consider to be a little more a little more relevant measure of success for me, at least.
What a great answer. Another very insightful, unexpected answer of success. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Rasika, for sharing that. Govind, how about you? From what you're seeing, how do you measure success of AI in your industry or in your role?
Sure. In the financial services industry, there are like various metrics that we can actually like look at to measure the success. Depends on each use case. So say for example, let's take the credit card like fraud detection stuff, right? So for example, what's the percentile of the transactions we identify, a real fraud transaction that we identify catch upfront before products is being delivered or procured by customers, right? Like that's one measure like I would actually like say, because how are you protecting your merchants in the as part of your payment processing? That's one measure like I would actually like measure it based on the fraud detection use case. The second thing I would also like measure is what's the net revenue like that you derive out of using AI ML models or generative AI to help your business to enable like more innovative products and services, right? And that would have a positive impact on our balance sheet, right? That's the second measure like I would actually like look at. Then the third measure is if you look at from my perspective, user productivity gains is another measure like you could actually like use with AI, where you're co-authoring your code with GitHub Copilot or Code Assist or any of those code companions, where you're actually like authoring code with a agent, right, which is autonomous in nature. My perspective is AI is not going to replace human, but it's going to help human to act in a highly like efficient manner where we can actually like help drive some of those aspects. So it's kind of balance that we need to take into account.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think some of the measures you've mentioned, it's hurry up, use it to compete and deliver value, but be very careful and don't violate any confidentiality, regulatory requirements, intellectual property. It's this big tug of war, this big dichotomy. I think we're all experiencing that out there. So I think that's a really good observation. I wanted to ask each of you another question about something that Rasika had already mentioned around ethical AI. She had brought up some bias. She brought up diversity and some of the technologists building this and promoting this technology. So maybe we'll start with you, Rasika. Kind of what role does ethical AI play in your work? And how do you operationalize it? How do you actually bring that to bear, if you will, to bring ethics and responsible AI into how you're using AI and promoting it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I think, well, so like in academia, right, a lot of, we do a lot of teaching, but we also do a lot of research. And so like that's, I think like sort of specific places where ethics come into play. And at least at Northeastern, we really like to choose research that is intended to like help students learn. And so and like the learning of the student as a researcher is a part of the goal. So like teaching them about like considering the impacts of the tools that you build, is this the appropriate data, those kinds of things. And so for example, there are some data, some research projects that we work on, like with climate change and things like that, where uh, you know, uh, just because it's addressing climate change doesn't mean that it's automatically ethical, right? Like we go through and consider, like the stakeholders and the bias in the data, those kinds of things, which is also why I'm interested in hearing what the other two people on this panel have to say, because it's so my research area is very narrow. So yeah, I wonder what you all have to say.
I am as well. Govind, can you tell us the same question? What role does ethical AI play in your work and how do you operationalize it?
Okay, ethics is very important aspect in financial services industry, right? Because uh, say, for example, we collect a lot of personal information from customers, cardholder data, and we are contractually obligated to meet the requirements, what's actually like written black and white in those contracts, right? When it comes to the data usage rights, we need to actually like use the data that's what we are authorized to use, because it would be considered unethical or illegal to use the data for a different purpose. And that's where as part of our like vetting out process, we engage attorneys and others like to make sure how we supposed to use the data, because the way how contractual languages are written, in my perspective, we are supposed to use the data based on what we are actually like allowed to use ethically.
Anything else? Or Harry, you want to take a stab at our
Yeah,
ethical
and
AI from your perspective?
it is kind of interesting to hear Govin's perspective too, because for us in pharma and research right now, the main thing that we've been focused on related to ethical AI is like really responsible use in terms of transparency. Like one thing that we've really noticed with new users, because that's one of the things we're doing with AI adoption, is bringing people into AI for the first time, and there's always awe. There's only like two reactions that we usually get. People are either one, surprised by how good it is, or people are surprised by how much hallucination it does. And I think in both cases, you actually need to be transparent when you are intending to use AI, especially in our industry with like research. It has to be clear that you're using it. You have to know what you're getting. Like you have to know that it can hallucinate. You don't want to just take anything that's output from your products related to AI and then push it forward in the research pipeline. So I think this is really about education and expectation setting for like transparent use of the technology, incorporating into all the products as we build it. And this is the first thing we're really focused on. But there's so many other parts of responsible AI use that it's like going to be a long journey.
How do you make your clients trust it? Or like I guess how do you do user-centered design here?
Yeah. Um, in the context that I just spoke about, we've really put the experts at the center of the creation right now. Like we've really democratized AI adoption. We're trying to get people excited, like I've said. And when you do that, the expert, the person who's like first creating this AI product, gets to see what kind of responses are coming out and they audit it. It's a little different if you kind of remove the development of it from the end users, because then the end users don't know the quality of the output. They don't know what is going on behind the scenes. So it is really important to first start with the experts and kind of develop there for the use cases before you pass it along.
And I'm curious for each of your different domains and what you're seeing, how, I mean, there's ethics, there's bias. I think really what we were leaning into was data privacy, data access rights, even parts of this incorporated into the EU AI Act, which I know is getting teeth very, very soon. It's those are interesting aspects. And I think education is a big part of that. And I do also see sustainability come up quite a bit. What are your guys's, does just a general question to any of you, is this, are you seeing education and or sustainability become part of the conversation around ethics or responsible AI in any of your domains?
To some extent, yes. Like we're already seeing how it's being brought to the audience and the users, the energy consumption of the responses and the token generation, and how you can even consider the way that you write prompts so that you do not just maximize the generation and continue the use of energy. We have to and can be more intentional with the prompts we use. That's a short answer, but I think it is like starting to come and the awareness is coming.
Yeah, and to add to Harry's point, Josh, from a sustainability standpoint, like we also like need to look at what are the like the frequently asked questions, and then do kind of like a caching curated like responses. And that way what happens is you don't actually like hit the LLM always. You could actually like search using semantic search capabilities where like, hey, if somebody asks this, have a layer not always your requests need to go and consume those tokens from LLM provider perspective, because each time when you actually like hit a LLM or model as a service, what happens is it actually like need to consume power as well as like a lot of like resources, which behind the scenes where it needs massive cooling, right? Like take example of like NVIDIA Blackwell or like uh, the other like AI chips that's being used in the industry. They actually like need megawatts of and gigawatts of power. And even if you look at their infrastructure, the AI infrastructure, what's being used at a cloud scale, it's massive. And at, it could actually like drive a lot of like global climatic change. And that's where now recently, like if you look at like people like started doing using the distillation concept of extracting the necessary information from the model and like running small language models, as well as utilizing techniques and there are other like technology products that's coming into the market where they kind of like do curating these responses and cache them for future usage and update it to knowledge base of your choice. It could be like Atlassian Suite or like ServiceNow. So that way, like they use like vectorized based search techniques.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think something Govind said I'm seeing as well a big and a big shift from, how much data is there in the world and how much of it have I already used to train these frontier models, and where is all the compute going? I think it has shifted to inference, or inference being when you provide a prompt and it gives you a response, it's giving you its inference, for those who may not be familiar with that term. And a lot of computing horsepower now is being used on the inference side, and even on the fine training, these last stages, the last phases of training these large models. I'm not sure if any of you caught Ilya Sutskever's recent kind of affirmation that he gave about this very fact. It was quite interesting. So this is a great set of tips, I think, for the audience. Is extend with some semantic search, maybe provide some of the most common answers in a more prepared way to reduce maybe some of the overhead, or give guidance or education on prompt engineering, or for the layman people, just like do's and don'ts. Here's the best way to do this. And I've also even seen some shops putting CO2 emission scores on choices that they make, and see some companies gamify this with development, so that's kind of incentivizing and rewarding folks who are using more energy efficient infrastructures, even on the cloud side, to do anything they're doing in AI. So I think this is great. It's great suggestions. Thank you, guys. Any other thoughts on this, and before we switch?
Well, one thing, right? Like you mentioned, like educating the user on like what choices they're making is crucial, and I agree. But I also don't think that the entire blame should be put on the user, like the entire responsibility, right? Like education is great, right? And especially like in terms of well, obviously I'm a teacher, but in sustainability, you've been talking about it. I guess in another sort of like example that happened just like very recently in my own class, like I could say, like there's this tool that some people put together for like, oh, this is going to help teachers track student progress, except for that they have to like spend a bunch of time training us how to use those tools. And like, yeah, you can train us how to use those tools and stuff, and like other teachers, like high school teachers and all that, who have like no time, sure, spend time training them how to use. But like, why not instead like ask the teachers what they want? Because a lot of the times what the teachers actually want is not fancy new gadgets that they have to spend a lot of time learning, but like, you know like a basic, like, you want to use AI to help them take attendance. That's like a task that they spend at the beginning of each class that should be, solved by, taking attendance, right? So like yes, we can like education is good, like teaching people how to use AI, what it's doing, how useful is it, like how bad for the environment is it, like those are all good things to teach the user. I agree. But I don't think that the entire blame is on them. Yeah.
Either someone is actually like trying to sell them as a hype, or some things like really like work very well. They are not like hyped, or they people like don't even are aware of it, right? Say for example, take a case of NVIDIA's like Nemo guardrails. They have got like such a great potential to give contextual responses, and also like aligning to what like policies and other things like need to be applied. And there are like people, like a lot of people like took those kind of open source guardrails and built wrappers around them, and some do a great job, some they actually like do not such a great job, but still the one like that doesn't do the great job, like they actually like sell much far better than one that they're doing great things to guard against your like users. So as the implementers also like need to make sure that appropriate guardrails are in place, because I 100% agree with you, Rasika, that it's not always like a user end. We need to know what user wants and what will help the user, and go behind those like big ones, what will make that user to be more productive, efficient, but at the same time need to make sure the misuse doesn't happen or abuse of the system doesn't happen. That's actually like lies with the architecture, the implementation, and people like who governs those technology. Right? It's an equal responsibility across the board.
Yeah, I love you. I love that you called that out, Rasika. I completely agree with Govin. In fact, um, audience members of Cloud Security Alliance are likely familiar with the big debate in cybersecurity when it comes to educating users versus guardrails. The big debate of phishing training, like
Yep.
train people about phishing and when to click, when not to click. It only takes one. Look at Colonial Pipeline. One email, one click. All of East Coast is down in hundreds of millions of dollars of damage. So yes, you want to educate the users, but to Groven's point, if you have systems or technologies that provide guardrails that prevent the user from doing bad things, that's another option. So is it phishing training or is it security guardrails in that context? With AI, is it the implementer or the architects of the system that have put barricades around it that kind of incentivize or control the right behavior that you want that fits your responsible AI model? It's a really good debate, and I completely agree. It's completely unfair to expect the user to know all of this. Um, that said, there are a lot of educational requirements in the EU AI Act for users. So something that our audience may want to pay attention to or take a look at. There's certain requirements that are going to have penalizations soon if you're not educating your users by certain timeframes. That said, completely agree with that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Harry, any other thoughts on this before I throw another question at the
Uh,
group?
No, I love the discussion so far. I think we both
Great.
have come from the user and the guardrails point of view.
Yeah, yeah. So the never-ending debate. Um, I think another question I wanted to ask you guys, because this is something I hear about a lot, and I'm sure our audience members would love to hear. It's really about talent acquisition and how do you approach talent acquisition? How do you provide upskilling? Somewhat related to the education topic, but you know, using AI and growing the use of AI requires folks to become educated about it or potentially be experts in it. There's different approaches for finding this talent or bringing on this talent or even attracting this talent. I guess Harry, I'd love to start with you as far as what have you found? How do you approach talent acquisition for skills in AI or provide upskilling?
Yeah. The part of this question that I'll focus on is actually more the upskilling part, because I do think the technology today is ready. And there's still many, many people who have not even heard or used an AI product, not even a chatbot. Um, and I feel like one of the things that we've really been successful with generally is just enterprise wide upskilling with workshops and training material. And this is where you really are looking to bring the people and their use cases for AI to the technology, because it's ready. I think the technology is ready. And what we're missing now as an organization is all the deep insight of where it can be applied, which in my opinion is actually more of a creativity problem. Like once you start educating people and upskilling them, then you unlock the innovation of the crowd. And then they will show you all the places that we on our ivory tower cannot like predict what impact we could make with AI. So that upskilling I think is super important. And we're doing it through like online courses, workshops, and like just training material that we're making really easy to use to digest, not heavy on the technical or LLMs or background or anything like that, just as digestible as possible. And then that's how you bridge into the use cases and the value of the crowd. And we're really into the upskilling part right now.
That's absolute gold. Thank you, Harry, for sharing that. I think for anyone that hasn't started their journey, I think maybe rewind and listen to that again because that is so good. Thank you for sharing that, Harry.
Yeah, and
Um,
other aspect like to the upskilling part, Josh, is when your users are like motivated, okay, give them the resources that you have at your disposal. Say, for example, Udemy. Like some of the enterprises like subscribe to Udemy. Udemy has got great like course materials, as well as you have like contracts with cloud providers. Cloud providers like provide free courses available like at their disposal, where like you encourage your users to actually like spend time, and also like add it to as part of your performance like review. Say, hey, you're continuous, like learning is a continuous journey. So other thing I would actually like suggest is find your like mentor who works in this space and what you wanted to like do for the audience. So that way, like your mentors can help you to shape you up how you wanted to transform yourself and get the underlying like technology at your hand.
well, and I have to double down since we are at the CSA AI Summit. Your point about Cloud Security Alliance providing a great opportunity for community and finding mentors, contributing and learning. It's open to everybody. So I encourage anybody who is interested in that. It's all volunteer based. It's all free. You'll find a very eager community of practitioners who would love to meet with you and work with you. So please, you're all welcome to join that. I wanted to ask Rasika too, and I want to ask you the same question, Rasika, but just from what we've been hearing, how many of students in your courses are coming for what Govind was just talking about? Like I've been told I need to go learn this stuff, or like, I just got dropped in this role. My boss is telling me I have no idea. Are you seeing a good portion of your classes be those exact students, or are they more kind of college and up and comers getting master's degrees? Or I was just curious how much you see.
The Well, so funny you should say that. We have this like special program for people who have a bachelor's degree in something that's not computer science, who want to get a master's in computer science. And so basically, we have like a 1 year, very intensive program where we get them ready, and then at the end of that year, then they go into the master's program in computer science. And that program, like, I asked all of the students, like, what brings you to, like, why did you make this huge career change to computer science? And like pretty much all of them said, because AI is about to take over my old job. And they had some really like a wide variety of old jobs, right? Like uh, like one of them is like a professional chess player. And then there's a bunch of people who are like in finance and business and healthcare and all these different. But yeah, like it is a very common thing is that people who are in that program, the one for like a master's in computer science without a bachelor's in computer science, it's called the Align program. Like a lot of those students like switched from something else into computer science because AI is taking over the job. The undergrads are different, right? They're regular 18-year-old undergrads. But yeah, the master students, yes, absolutely, like upskilling or a lot of them are going to go back to a similar job that they had, but like with AI. So that's upskilling, or they might just completely switch to a programming related job.
Yeah, even to add to Rasika, Josh, like based on when I was doing the course, right, my cohorts are from different industry altogether. Some were like lawyers, some were like even finance analyst, building architects, like a lot of like different like medical professionals. I saw like very different variants, and when I was chatting with them, I asked, okay, what's actually like makes you think it's going to take your job? Then they said, oh, it's not about just taking jobs. I am passionate about doing something back to the society where someone wanted to contribute back to the society and empower AI to help them to meet their like passion goals and come up with products and services that can help humankind in a better way.
Yeah, and I just want to tap into some of that as well. In the sciences, it's so important for somebody to be bilingual. Like, it's really hard for you to come in just with machine learning and computer science background and then build a game-changing product for research, because you need to know what the output is. You do have to at least be able to speak the language. So it's great, Rasika, that you're kind of talking about the next generation who are in academia, who's upskilling themselves, really having a diverse background, which is very needed in our industry.
It's so great to have Rasika here representing academia when a lot of what we're talking about is education, so we get firsthand accounts. And what an indicator of how pervasive this is from what all of you have said. It really, it's impacting everything across the board. And something Govind said, I think folks should take away. There's a lot of fear, and I think that's also part of the education and the upskilling, in my opinion, is removing the fear. And I think Harry spoke to that, and Govind did, as far as incentivizing and creating a safe space for folks to learn and find out what they really can do and how they can actually do their jobs better. But it's it's amazing to see folks actually understand that they can reduce toil in their job or do their jobs easier or make a bigger difference with AI. And I think that's where folks should be realizing, and why I think the upskilling is so important. And folks like Rasika are, we need more of them. It's not so much it's going to replace jobs, but the people using AI are probably going to have a better chance of getting jobs than the people who don't. So I don't see AI itself replacing. It's the folks who use it and get much better at what they're doing, helping humankind or breakthrough scientific discoveries. So yeah, it's great. And Rasika, I did want to just ask you personally, in your own job or your role, or even within the university, um, what's the talent acquisition like for you guys, or upskilling? What if you wanted to take a vacation? Do you have other professors that can do what you do? Like, is there a good pool of talent there, or is this something that you guys really have to work hard at getting talent in the door to teach it?
Hiring in academia, like, or hiring into professor positions um, is different at each university, of course. But it's often like a long, intensive process, which includes research talks and teaching demos and things like that. I am lucky that I found this like teaching focused position at an institution that actually cares about teaching, right? And, like prioritizes teaching, right? Because yeah, it's true that finding not a lot of institutions are focused on like teaching the undergrads. Sometimes they have other priorities like research and whatnot, which those are also good priorities. But I like teaching. So and there isn't like a super great pipeline to being a teacher right now. Like, people are working on it. They're building some good programs, but there isn't a super great existing pipeline to become teaching faculty, like a teaching focused professor in computer science right now.
Mhm. Gosh, I feel like the need couldn't be more great. So anybody watching, by all means, um, great career path. You should teach more people. I think it's so critical, and everybody learns in different ways, right? Academia is one avenue. I wanted to circle back to something Harry said, because I think it was such a great way of describing the creativity and discovery. So how do you upskill? I think you're only going to get folks to embrace AI and be successful at AI if you can get your people to understand it and embrace it and use it. And that's really what Harry was speaking to. And the notion of getting it into the hands of the people, giving them some slight education, some workshops, some support, and I would say even giving them space and time to, you know, maybe defer some of their core objectives or give them a little bit more room to spend some quality time on this, not only removes the fear and gets people engaged in it, but it turns on the light bulb and folks start to see different ways that they can use it that we may have never thought of as the ones trying to bring it in or trying to help drive it. You get it in the hands of the people and they actually surprise you with the various different ways that they use it and then use cases that they come up with. I think that's such a good lesson to share with our audience. I feel like it's key. Get it in the hands of the people and let them tell you. I mean, they know best where their job is maybe not so fun or mundane, and nobody wants to do that work. Everybody wants to do real good work, and as Govind said, really contribute and do feel good about the job that they do. So I think that's just I wanted to reemphasize that. Thank you, Harry, for sharing that.
Yeah, and can I even expand on that a little bit too, if that's
Please.
one of the things that I thought was really challenging has been to like think of enough use cases close to the people you're trying to inspire so that they can be inspired by it. Because otherwise, when you do talk about LLMs and chatbots, you're kind of just looking at a blank chatbot screen and you're like, what do I ask? What can it do? And unless you're somebody who has a high tolerance and high patience for just typing and exploring and then realizing it can do this and can't do that, it's actually easier for the rest of the crowd if you just had examples close to home. And then when they see it, they have that aha moment. And then maybe they are connecting it to something else that they do in their everyday work. And I think this is how, in the enterprise setting, we really unlock real value. Because I do, again, think the technology is ready today and people can come up with work that accelerates themselves. So we can do things like deliver medicine faster. But it is a challenge to actually put yourself in the shoes of like what every individual might be interested in or what groups of people might be interested in. But that's the work worth doing.
It's almost kind of similar back to what Harry was saying about bring it close to home. So if I was to step back and summarize what we've been saying here around the kind of upskilling your workforce or you know, I say talent acquisition and that's a bad term. Building up AI intellectual intellect within your organization, educating folks and getting them up to speed on how they can use AI to in their job and to make their life hopefully better, make the world better by delivering their job better and reducing toil. It's get the tools in their hands, give them some examples, give them some workshops, give them some space, incentivize, and maybe give them some objectives. And I think I heard it early on. I forget which one. I think Govind had mentioned about even putting it in job descriptions as far as the folks that you want to get, like make it part of your core objectives, put it part of a promotion path, start articulating it in a way that the more you use AI, the more rewarding your career will be here at this company. And then putting it in your job descriptions, you'll attract folks who are interested in AI. So you're upscaling internally and you're attracting the AI talent externally. I think these are all really
Yeah,
good points you guys have shared.
in addition to that, like uh, it's also like equally responsible to make sure how things are being used, govern them, right? And apply
Yeah,
like
don't forget about the
preventive
guardrails.
guardrails. Yeah,
Right.
like
Yeah.
secure by design, privacy by design, they all are the foundational component. So when you're trying to enable it, like make sure those foundational components are enabled by default.
On behalf of Cloud Security Alliance, Govind, I'm sure the we would appreciate that, including yourself. I know you're a member. That yes, you want to enable experimentation, but safely, with low risk, without exposing intellectual property and data integrity issues. So guardrails, yes. I'd like to explore, would love to hear from you guys because you're all from such different walks of life, different industries. Looking ahead, how do you envision AI transforming your industry for the industries that you guys are in? Let's say in 5 years from now, what would your industry look like with AI? What do you envision that would happen?
I think that that there is a trend towards people wanting to know more about AI. I do think that like students will know like they will still take classes on like the fundamentals of computer science that they have right now, like you know, writing code. But then soon after that, they will shift to like using AI to write their code, and they already do that at in a lot of classes, right? So like the only places where they don't use AI to help them is like the very introductory courses. You know, like a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, we won't need programmers anymore. And I don't think that's true. I think what Govind was saying applies here too, right? Like AI is not going to replace programmers, but programmers with AI will replace programmers without AI. And so, you know, that's a quotation, famous quotation. I didn't make that up.
How about you, Harry? How do you see AI transforming your industry in, say, in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I feel like 5 years is a really long timeline to predict in this specific case. Things have just been changing so fast. All I can say is I do think that AI has been really necessary for some of the disruption that the healthcare life sciences has needed, because it's so difficult now for any individual human being to read thousands and thousands of articles related to any one disease area, to synthesize something that's meaningful and enough shots on goal to like make medicines for humanity. So I think everything from drug discovery to personalized medicine to clinical trial could really benefit from like this new technology that can summarize and take insights across so much information that's essentially not humanly possible. Like this will create a new frontier for medicine, I think, and it's exciting to see that playing out.
Would it be safe to say you envision it accelerating scientific breakthroughs, Harry?
Yeah, for sure. It's really going to empower like the way that we do science, disrupt it to some extent, transform it, but it really will accelerate things.
Yeah. Well, there's hope for us yet. That's great to hear. Thank you, Harry. That's fantastic. Govind, how about you? How do you see your industry changing with AI over the next 5 years?
From a financial services industry, like if you look at the way how payments are being orchestrated and transacted, it could actually like change the way how we do business. Because currently, if you look at the, especially mainly the fraud detection or analytics side of it, it's all done either in a centralized or a federated way. With the availability of small language models, where I could see it could be actually like done within a browser itself, where you, if you have a model that could actually like detect some fraudulent transaction right at the browser and protect the user that, hey, you're actually like trying to do a fraud, like try to make a payment in a fraudulent site and help like protect them. And say, for example, the digital like payment devices that's available in stores, if you're making in-store purchases, when somebody is actually like trying to make a payment either through wallet or through cards or through other means, right? It could actually like, you could have models that could actually like predict, hey, this seems to be a fraudulent like activity, and those kind of like things are going to be coming. That's what the industry is predicting.
That's great. So, what a great set of answers. Let me try to summarize what the collective future that we've been talking about looks like. We're going to have better teachers who get more time to care about their students. We're going to develop drugs and improve healthcare and have scientific breakthrough and maybe cure Alzheimer's and cancer. We're going to prevent fraud, and we're going to have agentic workflow to help people get some basic things done quicker, maybe from, hey, I see this house online. I really like to buy it. It runs your credit. It checks your finances. It sees all of it inspects the title. It validates transfer, and you get an email that the house is yours. Like maybe this could be one of our futures. I like better teachers, better drugs, reduced fraud, and I want to get my house quicker. So yes, I love this future. Thank you guys for all of this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Great. Well, yes, great discussion. You guys really appreciate each and every one of yours time and insights. And for anyone else listening to this, thank you for joining the Cloud Security Alliance AI Summit. I know it's day 2 and we're just getting started. I really encourage you to join the rest of the sessions and interact and engage, and come join the Cloud Security Alliance. We'd love to have you here too. Thank you, everybody.